This aircraft didn't stall. It didn't lose an engine. And nothing was broken, at least, not visibly. Yet for the final 40 seconds, the plane was slowly descending, with the engines quietly pulling themselves back to idle. The crew trusted the automation. The automation trusted one sensor. And that sensor was wrong. This is Turkish Airlines Flight 1951, a crash where the danger wasn't sudden. It was invisible. Turkish Airlines Flight 1951, also known as the Polder crash, or the Schiphol Polderbaan incident, was a passenger flight that crashed during landing at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, the Netherlands, on the 25th of February 2009, resulting in the deaths of 9 passengers and crew, including all 3 pilots. The aircraft, a Turkish Airlines Boeing 737-800, crashed into a field about 1.5 kilometers north of the Polderbaan runway 18R. Prior to crossing the A9 motorway inbound at 9:26 UTC, having flown from Istanbul, Turkey, the aircraft broke into 3 pieces on impact. The wreckage did not catch fire. The crash was caused primarily by the aircraft's automated reaction, which was triggered by a faulty radio altimeter. This caused the autothrottle to decrease the engine power to idle during approach. The crew noticed this too late to take appropriate action to increase the thrust and recover the aircraft before it stalled and crashed. Boeing has since issued a bulletin to remind pilots of all 737 series and BBJ aircraft of the importance of monitoring airspeed and altitude, advising against the use of autopilot or autothrottle while landing in cases of radio altimeter discrepancies. A 2020 The New York Times investigation claimed that the Dutch investigation into the crash either excluded or played down criticisms of Boeing, following pressure from Boeing and U.S. federal safety officials, who instead emphasized pilot error as a factor, rather than design flaws. On board were 128 passengers and 7 crew members. The flight was under the command of instructor Captain Hasan Tahsin Arizin, aged 54, a former Turkish Air Force fleet commander. Captain Arizin had been working for Turkish Airlines since 1996 and was one of the most experienced pilots at the airline. He had over 5,000 hours of flight time on the F-4E Phantom II. Olgay Zgr, aged 28, was the safety pilot of the flight, a graduate of a flight school in Ankara, who flew the MD-284 World-focused airlines before joining Turkish Airlines and passing the 737 type rating in 2006. He was sitting in the cockpit's center jump seat. Murat Caesar, aged 42, under line training, was flying as co-pilot. The cabin crew consisted of Figen UN, Perihan Gazdan, LV Murat Eskin. The flight was cleared for an approach on runway 18, or also known as the Polderbaan runway, but came down short of the runway threshold, sliding through the wet clay of a plowed field. The aircraft suffered significant damage. Although the fuselage broke into 3 pieces, it did not catch fire. Both engines separated and came to rest 330 feet from the fuselage, while several survivors and witnesses indicated that rescuers took 20 to 30 minutes to arrive at the site after the crash. Others have stated that the rescuers arrived quickly at the scene. About 60 ambulances arrived, along with at least 3 Lifeliner helicopters and a fleet of fire engines. An unconfirmed report by The Telegraph states that the firefighters were at first given the wrong location for the crash site, delaying their arrival. Lanes of the A4 and A9 motorways were closed to all traffic to allow emergency services to quickly reach the site of the crash. All 3 pilots died in the crash. The bodies of the 3 cockpit crew members were the last to be removed from the plane. At around 20 o'clock, some of the survivors said that one of the pilots was alive after the crash. The relatives of the passengers on the flight were sent to Amsterdam by Turkish Airlines shortly afterward. All flights in and out of Schiphol Airport were suspended, according to an airport spokeswoman. Several planes were diverted to Rotterdam, The Hague Airport, and to Brussels Airport. Around 11:15 UTC, the Kogbon runway 0624 was reported to have been reopened to air traffic, followed by the Boy 10 Veldebaan runway 0927. The cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were recovered shortly after the crash and sent to Paris for investigation. During final approach to Schiphol, the captain's radio altimeter malfunctioned, suddenly showing 8 feet instead of the correct altitude, while the first officer's altimeter worked normally. This triggered repeated landing gear warnings. At the same time, the first officer mistakenly configured the autopilot for a single-channel approach, using the captain's autopilot, unknowingly relying on the faulty altimeter. Because of the incorrect altimeter data, the autothrottle entered retard mode prematurely and held the engines at idle. overriding pilot inputs. The aircraft steadily lost speed for about 100 seconds, falling well below safe approach speed. A stall warning activated at about 490 feet, but there was insufficient altitude and airspeed to recover, and the aircraft crashed tail. Flight data showed the same altimeter problem had occurred on 2 previous landings, where crews responded correctly, prompting questions about why stronger action was not taken this time. Boeing later issued guidance, reminding pilots to closely monitor airspeed and altitude and avoid autopilot or autothrottle use when radio altimeter discrepancies occur. The crash was widely attributed to pilot inattention, though other causes were debated in Turkish media. Wreckage recovery began on the 9th of March 2009. The first officer survived the initial impact, but died before rescuers could access the cockpit due to reinforced security doors. The final report was released on the 6th of May 2010. The DSB stated that the approach was not stabilized. Hence, the crew ought to have initiated a go-round. The autopilot followed the glide slope, while the autothrottle reduced thrust to idle, owing to a faulty radio altimeter showing an incorrect altitude. This caused the airspeed to drop and the pitch attitude to increase. All this went unnoticed by the crew until the stick shaker activated. Prior to this, air traffic control advised the crew to intercept the glide slope from above. This obscured the erroneous autothrottle mode and increased the crew's workload. The subsequent approach to stall recovery procedure was not executed properly, causing the aircraft to stall and crash. Turkish Airlines disputed the crash inquiry findings on stall recovery. Turkish Airlines Flight 1951 is a powerful reminder of how small technical failures, combined with human factors, can lead to tragedy. One of the key lessons is the importance of constantly monitoring primary flight instruments. Airspeed and altitude must always be cross-checked, especially during critical phases like landing. This accident also shows the danger of over-reliance on automation. Autopilot and autothrottle systems can behave incorrectly when they receive faulty data, and pilots must be ready to disengage them immediately. Unreliable indications such as conflicting altimeter readings or unexpected warnings must never be ignored. Quick recognition and decisive action are essential. Maintaining strong manual flying skills is crucial. When automation fails, pilots need to confidently take control and fly the aircraft safely. Finally, this accident highlights the importance of crew coordination and strict adherence to procedures. Even a small configuration error can escalate if it goes unnoticed, and repeated technical issues should always trigger deeper investigation. The lessons from Flight 1951 continue to shape aviation safety today. Subscribe to the Black Box Series channel for more in-depth accident breakdowns and the lessons that help make flying safer.